I planned this dinner for everyone.
I turned 70 on a Friday in November. And I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened that night. I'm not the kind of woman who makes a big deal out of birthdays. Never have been. My late husband Gerald used to tease me about it. Said I was the only person alive who could celebrate a milestone birthday with a grocery store sheet cake and feel completely satisfied. But 70 felt different. 70 felt like something worth marking. Something worth gathering the people I loved around a table and saying, "Look, we made it, all of us, together." So I planned a dinner. Not a catered event, not a restaurant reservation, nothing like that, just my dining room, the table I'd had since Gerald and I bought this house 32 years ago. My grandmother's china that only comes out for real occasions. And a homemade lasagna that takes me the better part of a Saturday afternoon to put together right. I spent 3 weeks thinking about that dinner. The menu, the flowers. I wanted dahlias because Gerald always brought me dahlias on special occasions, the playlist. Even the little handwritten place cards I made using the good calligraphy pen I'd kept since my teaching days. I invited my son, Marcus, his wife, Celeste, their daughter Ava, who's 9 and already smarter than most adults I know, my sister Phyllis and her husband Warren, and my neighbor Donna, who's been my closest friend for 20 years and who I couldn't imagine celebrating anything without. I called everyone 2 weeks out. Confirmed with everyone again 4 days before. Marcus said, "Wouldn't miss it, Mom. I'll bring that Chianti you love." Phyllis said, "I'm making your favorite coconut cake for dessert. Don't you dare buy one." Donna said, "I'll be there at 5 to help you set up." I had 8 place settings on that table. The dahlias arrived Friday morning. Deep burgundy and burnt orange. Exactly what I'd pictured. I arranged them in Gerald's old ceramic pitcher that I keep on the sideboard and stood back and thought, yes, this is right. This is what 70 looks like. By 6:15, the lasagna was resting on the stovetop. The bread was warm in the oven. The wine was open and breathing. I was wearing the emerald green blouse Marcus had given me for Christmas 2 years ago. I'd done my hair. By 7, nobody had come through the door. I checked my phone. No messages. Called Marcus. Straight to voicemail. Called Celeste. Voicemail. Called Phyllis. Nothing. Called Donna. Nothing. Which genuinely alarmed me because Donna had never once in 20 years not picked up her phone. I told myself there was probably traffic on the interstate. There'd been construction on Route 9 for weeks. I told myself someone's car had maybe broken down and they were all together somewhere trying to sort it out. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room and waited. By 8 o'clock, the bread had gone stiff and the lasagna was cooling into something that would need reheating. I walked to my front window and looked out at the driveway. As if staring at the empty concrete would somehow summon headlights. It didn't. I picked up my phone again and made the mistake of opening Instagram. The first thing that loaded was a video. Celeste had posted it 40 minutes ago. She was on a deck somewhere, holding a glass of rosé. The blue shimmer of a lake behind her. The last orange light of the day painted across the sky. She was laughing at something off camera. Golden hour at the lake. The caption read, "These people, this view, this life, so grateful." I scrolled down. There was Ava in a kayak, grinning her gap-toothed grin. Marcus steadying her from a dock. There was Phyllis and Warren clinking glasses at what looked like a resort restaurant. White tablecloths, candles, everything. There was Donna, my Donna, sitting with a group of people around a bonfire. Her head thrown back laughing. They were at Lake Hargrove, a resort about 2.5 hours from here. The same resort Celeste had mentioned, casually, to Marcus back in the spring. The one she'd told him would be perfect for a girls' weekend sometime. Apparently, it had become something else entirely. The trip had been booked for my birthday weekend. I sat down slowly in Gerald's armchair, the old leather one I've never been able to get rid of, and I held my phone in my lap and I didn't cry. I want to be clear about that. I didn't cry. I felt something colder than tears. Something that settled in my chest like a stone dropping into still water. A terrible, quiet clarity. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't traffic on Route 9 or a dead car battery or a family emergency nobody had thought to mention. This was deliberate. Celeste had organized a trip, invited my entire inner circle, including my own sister and my closest friend, and she had scheduled it for the one weekend in the year that belonged to me. And somehow, not one of those people had thought to tell me. Or maybe they had been told not to. I heated up a single portion of the lasagna, ate it at the kitchen table instead of the dining room, wrapped everything else in foil and put it in the refrigerator, blew out the candles one by one, put the dahlias in a smaller vase and moved them to the windowsill over the sink where I'd see them in the morning. I did all of this very carefully, very methodically, because I knew that if I stopped moving, if I sat down somewhere and really let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened, I might not get back up again. Marcus texted at 9:47. "Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry we couldn't make it tonight. Celeste surprised us with this trip. Kind of last minute. Hope you had a nice evening. Birthday cake. Kind of last minute." I set the phone face down on the nightstand and lay in the dark and thought about my marriage to Gerald, who'd been gone for 6 years now. He'd adored Marcus. Used to say, "That boy has a good heart. Carol, he just needs the right person to help him use it." I wondered what Gerald would think of the right person now. I wondered if he'd see what I was starting to see, that the slow, steady dimming of my son's presence in my life hadn't happened by accident. I thought about the last 4 years. The accumulation of small things. Marcus's birthday, his 42nd. I'd planned a surprise. Nothing big, just his college friends and some family gathered at his favorite steakhouse downtown. Celeste had called me 2 days before, voice warm with apology. "Carol, I'm so sorry, but Marcus has been so stressed at work. I really don't think he's up for a big gathering. Can we just do something small? Maybe next month?" I'd cancelled the reservation. His friends were disappointed. Marcus never mentioned anything about work stress that weekend. In fact, he posted on Facebook about a golf game he played that Saturday. Ava's second-grade play. I'd asked Celeste 3 times what time it started because I wanted to be sure I had a seat in the front row. 8 o'clock, she told me. 8 o'clock sharp. I arrived at 7:45 to find the school auditorium nearly full. The play clearly already underway. The teacher told me later it had started at 7. I'd missed Ava's entire speaking part, 2 whole scenes, because I'd had the wrong time. Celeste said it must have been a mix-up in the school's communication. Thanksgiving 2 years ago, I'd hosted for 16 years in a row. Then Celeste announced that she thought it would be special to start fresh traditions. Her family was flying in from Phoenix and she wanted to have everyone at her house. I understood, or tried to, but when I arrived, I found myself seated at what was clearly the secondary table, squeezed in with Celeste's teenage cousins while the adults sat at the main table in the dining room. Marcus caught my eye once across the room and smiled apologetically, then went back to the conversation around him. Each memory arrived now in sequence, and I lay there in the dark lining them up like evidence. Each one too small to prosecute on its own, but together forming a pattern so clear I couldn't understand why it had taken me this long to see it. I finally fell asleep around 3 in the morning. It wasn't restful. Saturday came gray and cold. I made coffee, called my sister Phyllis, and got her voicemail again. Left a message, just my voice, calm and even. "Hi Phyllis. It's Carol. Give me a call when you get a chance." She called back that afternoon. Her tone was the careful, apologetic voice of someone who knows they've done something wrong but has already decided they're not going to take full responsibility for it. "Carol, I'm so sorry about last night. Celeste said she'd talked to you and that you were fine with us going. That you decided you didn't want a big fuss for your birthday this year." The room got very quiet around me. "She said I'd decided that," I repeated. "She said you two had talked and you told her you wanted to keep it low-key." Phyllis's voice wavered slightly. "Carol, I swear I thought you knew." I believed her. That was the thing. I believed that Phyllis genuinely thought she'd had my blessing to miss my birthday. Because that was how this worked, not with blunt cruelty. Not with anything you could point to directly. But with careful repositioning of the facts. with a quiet word here, a sympathetic shrug there, until everyone around her was operating on the version of reality she'd constructed. Celeste had told my sister I didn't want a celebration. Which meant my birthday dinner, the one I'd spent 3 weeks planning, had been sabotaged before it even started. After I hung up with Phyllis, I sat with that for a long time. I thought about how many other conversations Celeste had probably had. How many other small revisions to the truth she'd offered over the years to the people I was closest to. I wondered what Marcus had been told about me. I wondered what Ava had been taught to think of her grandmother. I thought, I have been disappearing from my own life, and I didn't even know it was happening. The knock at my door came Monday morning. I was still in my bathrobe, which tells you something about where my head was. I wasn't expecting anyone and I almost didn't answer. But something made me get up and look through the peephole. A woman was standing on my porch. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a coat that looked like she'd been traveling in it for a while. She had the look of someone who'd rehearsed what she was about to say and was terrified anyway. "Mrs. Whitfield?" she called through the door. "Carol Whitfield? I'm looking for Marcus Whitfield's mother." My hand tightened on the doorknob. "Who's asking?" A pause. Then, "My name is Nina Farrow. I need to talk to you about your daughter-in-law. I think she's been living under a false identity. And I think I know who she really is." I opened the door. Nina Farrow came inside and sat on the edge of my couch like she might need to run at any second. She was holding a leather portfolio on her lap with both hands. And I noticed her knuckles were white. "I know how this is going to sound," she said. "Please just let me get through it before you throw me out." "I'm 70 years old," I said. "I've had a very strange week. I don't think you can surprise me." She took a breath. "I'm a paralegal. I work for a firm in Charlotte that handles family law and estate cases. About 4 months ago, a client came to us, a man named Patrick Sue, trying to locate a woman he'd been in a long-term relationship with. She left him suddenly, about 8 years ago, took nearly everything in their joint account, and disappeared. He'd been looking for her for years." She opened the portfolio and pulled out a photograph, set it on the coffee table facing me. It was Celeste, a younger Celeste, maybe by 10 years, her hair shorter, dressed differently, but unmistakably her, the same eyes, the same particular tilt of her head. Her name then was Claire Sue. Nina said, "Well, Claire Morrison, before she married Patrick. She and Patrick were married for 2 years. She left without warning, cleared their savings, and vanished. Patrick hired investigators twice, never found her." I picked up the photograph. My hand was steady, which surprised me. "He came to your firm 4 months ago," I said. "Why now?" "Because he saw a photo online." Nina pulled out her phone and turned it toward me. It was one of Celeste's Instagram posts from the summer. Ava's 9th birthday party. Balloons, sunshine, Ava grinning in a paper crown. Celeste was in the background, laughing at something Marcus was saying. He recognized her immediately. He said he'd know her anywhere. "But Celeste, Claire, she's been married to my son for 9 years." "Which means," Nina said carefully, "that she was still legally married to Patrick Sue when she married Marcus." The room felt like it was tilting slowly to one side. "The marriage is invalid," I said. "Potentially. That's what our firm is investigating. But there's more, Mrs. Whitfield." Nina reached into the portfolio again. "While we were building Patrick's case, we found a pattern. Claire Morrison isn't the only name she's used. Before Patrick, there's strong evidence she was involved with a man in Tennessee under a different name entirely. She has a history of this, new identities, new cities, new men. She does it to their families. Doesn't she?" I said. It wasn't a question. Nina looked at me carefully. "What do you mean?" "She separates them from the people who knew them before, from anyone who might ask too many questions or remember something inconsistent." I thought about Phyllis at that lake resort, about Donna at the bonfire, about all the carefully engineered absences and all the quiet revisions to the truth. She creates a controlled environment, and then when the environment serves its purpose, she moves on. Nina sat very still. Yes, That's exactly the pattern we've documented. What does she want? I asked. From Marcus. What's the endgame? Nina hesitated. We believe she's been systematically positioning herself as the sole decision-maker in your son's financial life. Our investigator found that 3 years ago, Marcus revised his will. The previous version left his estate split between himself and any children, with provisions for you and his aunt. The current version leaves everything, the house, the investments, his life insurance, to Celeste directly. And 6 months ago, he took out a significant second mortgage on the house. My coffee had gone cold. I stared at it without seeing it. She's been building towards something, Nina said quietly. We think she may be close to whatever her exit looks like. The isolation of family members, particularly someone like you, someone who knew Marcus before she came along, someone he trusts deeply, that's often a sign that the end phase is approaching. And there it was, my birthday dinner, sitting cold and untouched while my son posted kayak photos from a lake resort. Not just cruelty, not just control, a timetable. How much time do we have? I asked. Nina looked me in the eye. That's why I'm here, Mrs. Whitfield. I think you may be the most important person in this situation. Not the lawyers, not Patrick's case. You, because Marcus will believe you in a way he might not believe a stranger. I thought about my son. His good heart, like Gerald always said, his trusting nature, his genuine, uncomplicated love for the people he let in. I thought about how that same beautiful quality had made him exactly the kind of man a woman like Celeste would target. I thought about Ava. Tell me what I need to do, I said. The next 10 days were the longest of my life. I met with Nina's firm 3 times. Patrick Sue joined us by video call on the second meeting, a quiet, careful man in his 40s who'd spent 8 years wondering what he'd done wrong. Hearing him describe his relationship with Claire, the gradual isolation from his own family, the financial control, the sudden disappearance, it was like hearing a preview of Marcus's future. I prepared myself. I organized the documents Nina's firm provided. I made my own notes, going back through years of memories with new eyes, writing down dates and details I'd previously brushed aside. I was methodical about it, the way I used to be when I was preparing lesson plans. Think through every angle. Anticipate every question. Make sure the facts speak for themselves. And then I called Marcus. I need to see you, I told him. Just you and me. Can you come for lunch this week? A pause. The sound of him, I was sure, glancing toward wherever Celeste was in the house. Everything okay, Mom? I'm fine, I said. I just miss my son. I haven't had you to myself in a long time. He came on Thursday. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup, the lunch I used to make him after school when he was small and the world felt simple. He sat at my kitchen table and looked, I thought, tired in a way that had become his baseline, like he'd forgotten what rested felt like. I'm sorry about your birthday, he said first thing. He'd said it twice already, by text and by phone, but sitting across from me he seemed to need to say it again. It wasn't right. I should have called sooner. I should have. I know, I said. We'll talk about that, but first I need to tell you some things. And I need you to hear me out all the way to the end before you respond. Can you do that? He looked at me for a long moment. You're scaring me, Mom. I know, I'm sorry, but I need you to be a little scared right now. Just for a little while. I told him everything, not emotionally, not with accusations. I'd been very careful about that. Rehearsed it until I could deliver it like facts. Because that's what they were. I told him about Nina's firm. About Patrick Sue. About the marriage that had never been legal. I showed him the photograph of a younger Claire Morrison and watched his face as he processed it. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, the second mortgage. His voice was very quiet. She said it was for Ava's college fund. That we needed to move it somewhere safer while the markets were. He stopped, put both hands flat on the table. The will, he said. I know. He stood up abruptly and walked to my kitchen window. The same window I'd stood at a dozen times in the past 2 weeks looking at the same gray November yard. I watched his shoulders, the tension in them, the way his breath came harder and then slowly. Deliberately. Steadied. Ava, he said. It wasn't a question exactly. More like he was saying the most important word he knew to remind himself what mattered. Ava is your daughter, I said. Whatever else is true, that's true. He turned around. His eyes were red. He was holding himself very still the way Gerald used to when he was trying not to break down. I should have listened to you. The times you tried to. When you said something felt off. I always thought you were just having trouble adjusting. I told myself you were jealous of the time I spent with. He stopped again. His jaw worked. She told me you were jealous. Mom, that you couldn't let go of having me to yourself. And I believed her. I know you did, I said, because it wasn't an unreasonable thing to believe. And because she was very good at saying it. I crossed the kitchen and I put my arms around my son and he held on like he was 12 years old and the world had just done something unfair to him that he didn't understand yet. And I held on right back. Because that's what I was there for. What do I do? He asked against my shoulder. You let the lawyers do their jobs. I said, you protect yourself and you protect Ava. And you let me help. He nodded. I felt it more than heard it. The confrontation with Celeste didn't happen the way I'd expected. I'd imagined a dramatic moment. The documents on the table. The exposure. The unraveling. What actually happened was quieter and in some ways more devastating. Marcus met with a family law attorney and a forensic accountant before he said a word to Celeste at home. He moved money back into protected accounts and had the fraudulent will documented. He contacted his firm's legal department because the second mortgage had implications for assets connected to his business partnership. And then, on a Tuesday evening while Ava was at a sleepover at a classmate's house, Marcus sat down with Celeste at their kitchen table and laid out everything he knew. I wasn't there. Marcus told me about it afterward, sitting in that same kitchen chair where he'd eaten grilled cheese and tomato soup. Looking like a man who'd walked through something and come out different on the other side. She didn't deny it, he said. That was the thing I wasn't prepared for. I expected her to fight, to explain, to have some story ready. But she got very quiet. And then she asked how long I'd known. What did you say? I told her long enough. He looked out the window. She asked if you were involved. I told her yes. She said. He stopped. Rubbed the back of his neck. She said you were always going to be a problem. That she'd known from the beginning that you were the one person who might eventually figure it out. That landed somewhere deep in my chest. Not as a hurt. Exactly. More like a validation I hadn't known I needed. She wasn't wrong, I said. No. The corner of his mouth moved. Almost a smile. She wasn't. Celeste was gone within the week. She left with a single large suitcase and her car. No argument. No dramatic scene. Just gone. The way Nina's research had suggested she'd done before. In Tennessee. In Charlotte. In the life she'd built with Patrick Sue before she built one with my son. The difference this time was that she left without the financial exit she'd been engineering. The accounts had been frozen. The will contested. The second mortgage documentation turned over to attorneys. She didn't get what she came for. Ava, to her credit and to the credit of my remarkable son, was handled with extraordinary care. Marcus took time off work. They had sessions with a child therapist twice a week. He answered her questions honestly and age-appropriately. And when she asked him once, very directly, if Grandma Carol had helped figure things out, he said yes. Ava thought about that for a moment. Then said, I knew Grandma Carol was smart. I cried at that. The good kind. 3 months after Celeste left, Marcus and I established what he started calling our standing Thursday tradition. Every Thursday evening, I come to the house on Birchwood Lane, his house now. Just his and Ava's, and we have dinner together. Sometimes I cook. Sometimes we order pizza. Sometimes Ava and I bake something that turns out uneven and tastes incredible anyway. Donna came to the fourth Thursday dinner. She sat across from me and couldn't quite look me in the eye for the first few minutes. Then she said, I should have called you from that resort. Carol, I knew something felt wrong about going. I know, I said, and you would have, eventually. She told us all slightly different versions of the same story. Donna said, that you'd said you didn't want a fuss. That you were feeling rundown and thought a quiet night alone sounded better. She made it sound like she was looking out for you. That's how it works, I said, and I didn't say it bitterly. Just as a fact, because it was. Phyllis came the following Thursday. With coconut cake. The one she'd been planning to bring to my birthday dinner. Better late than never, she said, setting it on the table. And we both laughed. The kind of laugh that has a little bit of grief in it and still manages to be a real laugh. Spring came. Ava turned 10 and we threw her a party in the backyard with 23 fourth graders and a very patient face painting artist and a chocolate fountain that Ava had been requesting for 2 years. Marcus stood next to me for most of it, watching Ava move through the chaos of her own birthday like a tiny queen. And he said quietly, "Dad would have loved this." He absolutely would have, I said. He'd have been elbow deep in that chocolate fountain. Marcus laughed, a real laugh, full and easy, the one I'd been hearing less and less of for years and was now slowly coming back. That evening after the guests were gone and Ava was asleep in her room surrounded by birthday wrappings, Marcus and I sat on the back porch with decaf and the last of the coconut cake. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "Always." I spent a long time being ashamed of how completely I was taken in. How obvious it seems in hindsight. All the ways she maneuvered things. All the excuses I made. He was quiet for a moment. My therapist says shame is a natural response but not a useful one. Your therapist is right. I know, I'm getting there. He turned his coffee cup in his hands. What I keep coming back to is you. How you held on. How you didn't stop showing up even when you were being systematically pushed out. Even when it must have felt like nobody wanted you there. I never stopped wanting to be there. I said simply, "That's the thing about loving someone. It doesn't have an off switch." He nodded slowly. I think that's what she underestimated. She thought if she made you small enough, invisible enough, you'd eventually accept it and stop trying. She didn't account for the fact that you're the most stubborn person I've ever known. Your father would have said that was a compliment. It absolutely is. I looked out at the backyard where my granddaughter had just celebrated her 10th birthday. Where the streamers were still tied to the fence and the grass was littered with the remnants of a happy afternoon. And I thought about that Friday in November when I stood at this family's edge and felt myself disappearing. I thought about Nina Farrow's knock at my door and how close I'd come to not opening it. I thought about what it costs to be invisible and what it costs to refuse to be. "Marcus," I said. "Yeah?" "Set your alarm. I want to take you and Ava to the farmer's market in the morning. She said she wants to find those Japanese maples for the side yard." He smiled, relaxed and real. "I'll set it right now." I finished my decaf and listened to the spring peepers starting up in the woods at the edge of the yard. That small nighttime chorus that means winter is over. And I thought, this is what it feels like. Being here, being present, being the grandmother and the mother and the stubborn woman who refused to disappear. This is what I almost let someone take from me. I turned 70 on a Friday in November, and nobody came to my dinner. But I'm sitting on my son's back porch in April, and every chair at this table is accounted for. That's the ending I'm choosing to tell.